Good evening. Welcome to a very special video for December 25th, 2012. Of course, it is Christmas 2012, and we are dealing with a very interesting and complicated winter storm on the way. Now, I know not everyone's going to see snow, not everyone's going to see ice, but those locations that do see snow and ice, it's going to be rather significant and will have impacts on your travel over the next 48 to 36 hours. I've been very concerned about this storm while watching the storm unfold over the Gulf Coast, and I've been trying to, kind of make that known on Facebook and Twitter, and I'm going to show you why I'm concerned. Okay, and so first we're going to start off with the observations right now. Currently, we have temperatures in the upper 20s to mid 30s throughout the Philadelphia, New York City metropolitan area. But the key point to keep an eye on are these dew points, which are in the upper teens to upper 20s throughout the entire region. Of course, upper 20s as you head down towards southern New Jersey, upper teens as you head up towards the Hudson River Valley, northeastern Pennsylvania, and northern Connecticut. This is an important observation. And the reason why is because what we're seeing here is the development of what's called cold air damming ahead of this low pressure system. Unlike other storms that have tracked up the coast where we've seen very little support of high pressure and therefore little support of cold air remaining in place over locations, this is a situation where there is plenty of support for cold air to remain trapped, especially just north and west of the major cities and of course of the coast. And that's where it leads to a very complicated and potentially dangerous icing situation unfolding for locations like northwestern New Jersey, like the Hudson River Valley, especially right around, White Plains on north, especially around northern and central Connecticut, and of course in northeastern Pennsylvania, where you're thinking it'll go snow to rain, but instead it goes snow to freezing rain because temperatures remain right at 31, 32, rather than jumping up to 33 and 34. And that slight difference could make a major impact on any one of these locations. Along the coast, I'll talk about that as well. I still think this is mostly a rain event, but I'll explain to you why you too need to keep an eye on this storm for significant impacts. So let's take a look at the radar. And we're focused on the southeast here. And the reason why is because this is what's creating a lot of volatility in the forecast. These thunderstorms were not expected to be as intense as what has unfortunately transpired along the Gulf Coast with tornadoes, very strong winds, frequent lightning, just a very nasty day along the Gulf Coast with these severe thunderstorms and all of this heavy rain here entering the Tennessee River Valley. This rapid increase in latent heat energy is having a significant impact on the forecast and could lead to a track that's a little bit further south and east. We've seen the models adjust south and east for several runs now. The NAM has been a little bit on and off, but we've seen this with the European model, the GFS model, the UK Met, the Canadian model guidance, and they're all pointing to colder air remaining over the Philadelphia and New York City metropolitan area, and especially points north and west, longer than what was originally expected. And the warm air transport has been nowhere near what was expected so far. So, something to certainly keep an eye on, and this is why I've been studying this storm all day and kind of keep an eye on it and waiting just a little bit while I'm enjoying Christmas before putting out a forecast update. I wanted to get the full breadth of everything that's involving here. So when take a look at the water vapor satellite picture, you can see our strong disturbance clearly developing, starting to go into that negatively low as it's starting to pass the Mississippi River Valley. You can see we have a bit of a ridge here and another storm entering into the west coast. Now this kicker is interesting because what this kicker is forcing is a more progressive pattern. So the whole idea from the beginning of this storm tracking up into an upper level low with this type of weather pattern just didn't drive. It just didn't make any sense. So the idea that the storm is tracking along the coast now is, well, far more reasonable. The question is, does it track a little bit further east than what's being forecasted? And the reason why we have that question is because of what's happening here. You're seeing a tremendous amount of lifting here, and you're not seeing as much of a ridge building over the southeast here. It's a little bit flatter. And that will allow the low pressure system over the Tennessee River Valley by tomorrow morning to start to redevelop along the coast a little bit faster than what's being forecasted. So that's another aspect we're going to keep an eye on. But again, in order for this to be a significant change for the coast, this shift has to be a little bit more aggressive than what I'm thinking right now. So I just want to make that absolutely clear. My concern here is just north and west of the major cities, where freezing rain will be more of a threat than what's being forecasted currently by some out there in the media and by the National Weather Service. Here's another little map I want to point out here. This again is from the SPC. It's easy to find. It's from NOAA. And what this is a surface map and the wet bulb temperatures. Now I think this really shows exactly what the threat is here. You can see a 1036 millibar high, very strong over the plains, and you also see that ridging down along the coast. This is what's called cold air damming, a perfect signature. These are the wet bulb temperatures, and you can see the wet bulb temperatures are already at or below freezing over central New Jersey, much of Pennsylvania, Connecticut, New York City metropolitan area, and of course for central and southern New Jersey, especially on the coast, you're not exactly very warm with these wet bulb temperatures, right around 34, 35 degrees. So the point here I'm trying to make is that once this precipitation moves into this dry air, much like yesterday, where that precipitation changed over to snow very quickly, this time we have a stronger high pressure system ridging down the coast. We have a well-established cold air damming scenario. And this time we have an area of low pressure shifting towards the coast, enhancing that cold air damming setup. So again, we're not dealing with a low pressure system tracking up towards central Pennsylvania. We're dealing with a low pressure system that has to redevelop, has to shift towards the coast. The question is how far east, and what impacts will that have? Now when we take a look at 850 millibar temperatures, you can clearly see the strength of the warm air advection over the southeast, but over the northern mid-Atlantic, we remain below freezing here. This was expected, but what's interesting here is this shift in the warm air is a lot weaker over the southeast than what was expected. We were supposed to be a little bit warmer than what was being forecasted about 12 hours ago. So again, this is another indication of the actual environment being slightly colder than what's being forecasted. Not significantly enough, but again, for locations just north and west of the city, you don't need a significantly colder environment to create an issue here. Looking at the next issue here, we take a look at this map. This is the moisture transport coming out of the Gulf of Mexico. And the reason why I'm showing this is because this shows the amount of moisture that's being drawn into this low pressure system. So locations like northeastern Pennsylvania, southeastern New York, Connecticut, even along the coastal plain are going to be dealing with a significant amount of moisture here, leading to along the coast flash flooding and over the interior very heavy snowfall. Finally, I want to also point out the current 300 millibar map here of the winds. The reason why I want to show this is that this supports right here high pressure strengthening. This supports rapid intensification of a low pressure system, and this location of the jet streak supports low pressure developing off of the Delaware and Maryland coast. So we have all the jet streaks here lined up to support a rather interesting forecast going forward over the next 12 to 36 hours, and something that's going to have to be now casted very carefully. Now, if you're looking to not have to deal with snowfall along the coast, for now, it looks like you're pretty much in the clear. However, again, you don't need much of a shift here to create a rather surprising environment and developments along the East Coast. Again, though, tonight I'm generally focusing on my concerns to the north and west of this city. Here's the latest infrared satellite picture. You can see the intense convection developing. Now, what I'm expecting is that this low pressure system tracks up towards Virginia, then starts to redevelop right along the coast by, let's say, tomorrow evening. And then this low pressure system tracks from eastern Virginia towards Atlantic City, and from Atlantic City towards Boston. Taking a track like that obviously is going to lead to rain along the coast. However, again, if there is a slight shift, let's say from eastern Virginia to the New Jersey coastal waters towards the benchmark, then you're dealing with a much colder environment with a with a 1,031 millibar high, forcing cold air down the coast. So you're seeing exactly why I'm concerned here, and why only a slight shift would dramatically change this forecast, and why we have to keep an eye on the evolution of this storm. But for right now, I'm expecting to track again from eastern Virginia towards Atlantic City towards Boston, which leads to rain along the coast, an icy mesh just north and west, and a significant snowstorm over the interior. So let's take a look at the forecast for right now. And here we have, first along the coast, looking at rain. Now, initially, it could start off briefly as some snow mixed in, but I think with the winds shifting to the east, we'll see a rapid change over to just plain rain, looking for 1 to 2 inches of rain. Winds are going to be a serious problem, sustained from the east and northeast at 10 to 20 miles per hour, gusts over 40 miles per hour, and these winds, combined with high tide and the full moon here, will lead to significant coastal flooding. Unfortunately, with the impacts of Sandy still on many of the dunes and typical barriers that you see along the coast, those are gone now. So unfortunately, significant coastal flooding will be a threat for much of the New Jersey coast and also Long Island. So if you're right along the coast, unfortunately, prepare for significant coastal flooding anywhere from 2 to 5 feet above normal. Especially during high tide, it's not going to be pretty at all. A little bit further north and west, talking about just north and west of Philadelphia through New York City and of course the coast of Connecticut, the air is going to be a little bit colder and hang on a little bit longer. So I'm looking for a mix of snow, sleet, and freezing rain at the start. This snow and sleet, if it comes in heavy, could produce anywhere from a trace to as much as 2 inches, should I say 1 inch, over grassy surfaces. Again, I'm not looking for any significant accumulations, but that first front end could lead to a nice little burst here and catch some people off guard, especially tomorrow afternoon, evening during the rush hour. So just be on guard for that, but that too will change over to rain with accumulations of 1 to 2 inches of rain expected. Coastal flooding, again, winds from the east and northeast at 10 to 20 miles per hour, gusts over 40 miles per hour. Those along the immediate coast in this area will deal with some coastal flooding, so please be prepared for that. And also be prepared for these strong winds, creating the potential for power outages. Now we move into the tricky part of the forecast. I'm talking about Reading, Allentown, towards much of northwestern New Jersey, just to the north of New Haven and Connecticut. We're going to be looking at the potential for snow, ice, and then finally some rain changing back over to snow. Now I'm looking for accumulations of 1 to 3 inches of snow. My main concern here is ice, with a trace to up to 1/10 of an inch of ice. That icing could be more if the cold air holds on, especially in the form of freezing rain. Thereafter, looking for rain anywhere from 1 to 1.5 inches. Again, this would be less, and this could be more, depending on how that cold air holds on. So we're going to keep an eye on that very, very carefully, as this area is in line for the potential, has the highest volatility in this forecast, in my opinion, for a lot more ice than what I'm currently forecasting, and certainly a lot more than what the National Weather Service is advertising. So use some caution here and be careful and be prepared tomorrow evening into Thursday morning for very slick roads. Further north and west towards Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, Hazleton, over towards the central Hudson River Valley and off towards northwestern and northern Connecticut. I'm looking for snow mixing with at times of sleet and freezing rain. I don't think you see rain out of this. Looking for 4 to 8 inches of snow, ice accumulations from 0.2 to as much as a half an inch ice. Again, depending on exactly how the sleet and freezing rain all works out, this could be a major ice problem for you again. But I'm pretty confident on the 4 to 8 inches of snow. And then the question is how much sleet and freezing rain mixes in there to create your ice accumulations. And finally, the furthest north and west over extreme northeastern Pennsylvania, looking for anywhere from 8 to 12 inches of snow. That 8, it would be more likely to see 8 inches if you see more mixing with sleet. If you see more snow, look for about 12 inches. So again, a very complicated storm, a very fluid storm, and something that we're going to keep an eye on throughout the next 24 to 36 hours. This is not a slam dunk easy forecast, anything from it. and we have to keep an eye on this storm for any significant changes or any shifts in